how's your reading been going? Mine has been a bit scattered lately. Hello book friends. I'm calling this video my recent comfort reads video because I really didn't have a theme in mind when I picked out these books. I was really just looking for books that I thought would be easy and comfortable and fun to read and that would bring me joy. My new thing is that I'm trying to read books in pairs so that I can kind of like compare themes and make cohesive videos, but that didn't really work out for this set of books. So we will be starting that in the next video. So yeah, that didn't happen with these three books that I'm going to be talking about today, but I hope you enjoy this video anyway, because I really loved all of these books. And unlike the last video, this is going to be a very positive video because I loved all three of the books that I read recently. So today I'm going to be doing quick-ish reviews on Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood, Beyond the Wand by Tom Felton, and The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. These are books that I just wanted to read for various reasons, some of them for longer than others. Love on the Brain was released in the summer, and I wanted to read it from before it was even released, but for some reason I just never got around to it. The Dead Romantics was a similar story, was gonna read it around Halloween. That never happened. And Beyond the Wand, I was intrigued when I saw the announcement. I think it was in August. And I had just finished doing my Harry Potter series, and so I was just intrigued by it. I thought this is going to be the perfect follow-up because Harry Potter. So this video is just going to be all of my thoughts on these very unrelated books. But they are related, I suppose, in the sense that they are all familiar and comfortable. So Beyond the Wand is by Tom Felton. We know him as Draco Malfoy. And it's a memoir. I usually always just like memoirs. Love on the Brain is from an author that I had read before, so I kind of knew what to expect with that, although I was surprised. I'll talk more about that later. And The Dead Romantics I had heard great things about, and it's also kind of a romance, different kind of romance, so I was just really excited about that. So yeah. I picked them in the first place because I was looking for things that were just gonna be easy and not too dramatic because I just wasn't in a really dramatic mood. And I also didn't really want anything that required too much thought, such as a fantasy. So all of these turned out to be very easy, comfortable reads, and they were all exactly what I was looking for. So I'll just say now, I really enjoyed all of these books. And if you're looking for just comfortable, pleasant reading experiences, I would recommend all of these. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit more about each of these books. If you like these types of videos, please subscribe if you haven't already, so you don't miss out on any of my future book rants, rambles, and recommendations. So let's go. So the first book I want to talk about is Beyond the Wand by Tom Felton, because this one is probably the biggest shock when I first saw it. I was like, Draco Malfoy wrote a book? I didn't know he could write.
I didn't know you could read.
I had no idea what this book was going to be about. I didn't know if it was a novel or if it was going to be a memoir. I just didn't know. So it turned out to be a memoir, which is cool. I like memoirs. I do enjoy reading memoirs, and I rarely pick up one that I end up not liking because I pick them up based on one of two factors. One of them being I'm just interested in the person writing, and the second one is I know that the person has done something particularly interesting. So even if I'm not interested that much in that person, I want to know about their story. So unless the book is just really badly written, I pretty much always enjoy the memoirs that I pick up and read. So in this case, it was the first reason. I was just interested in what Tom Felton has been up to, because besides that one season of The Flash he was on a few years ago, I have no idea what he had been doing since Harry Potter. I was just nosy, to be quite honest. And there was that picture of him and Emma Watson wearing pajamas playing the guitar. I really wanted to know what was up with that. So overall, this was just a really fun and nostalgic memoir. It wasn't really hard-hitting, but I don't think it was really meant to be. It did touch on some issues such as drinking, anxiety, and depression, some heavier topics, but it didn't really focus on all of those things. It was, I think, really meant to be a really lighthearted journey down memory lane. As the book was going along, little discussions of those things were sprinkled in, but it really wasn't the focus. But then it got to the end. I'm talking like the very end, like the last 10, 20 pages. And it felt like the narrative like fell into a sinkhole and then popped right back out. What? Like it got really dark out of nowhere. but then it popped right back out because it was the end of the book already, so it had to recover. To me, this felt like it was the publisher telling him he needed to create some sort of climax in order to give the book a bigger significance than just little anecdotes about his life. To check all the boxes of the proper publishable memoir checklist, but it didn't really fit with the rest of the tone of the book. So it was a little bit jarring. But besides that, like I said, most of the book was very light and fun and just fun to read. It was filled with a lot of stories from Tom's early acting days, like the pea green clock era. That era was just adorable. And stories about what his life was like outside of acting, which he points out was very different from the lives of the three main stars, Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, and Rupert Grint. Like how he contrasts his experience growing up as a Harry Potter kid with theirs. So that was interesting. There were also a lot of stories about being on the Harry Potter set, which honestly, that was kind of why I was there. Like, I wanted to know the scoops about what was happening while they were filming Harry Potter, because isn't that all kids' dream, to like be on that kind of set when they're a kid, and then you grow up and you realize that it wouldn't be all like daisies being an actor. But when you're a kid, it just sounds like the dream. So it kind of felt like it wasn't adding up to anything. And at times I wondered where he was going with all of this. But after a while, I just kind of settled in and started just enjoying the ride. I think that's the privilege Tom has from being a part of such a beloved series. Because from a literary standpoint, I don't think this was an excellent piece of writing, but I enjoyed it nonetheless because I was leaning into the nostalgia. It was not especially poignant, but it was fun to just get into Draco Malfoy's memories in a way. So if you are picking up this book thinking it's going to be filled with tea, it is not. There was really no drama involving any other people, and like I said, the book was just very positive overall. The only negative points were Tom's personal issues and whatever negative points he wanted to bring up about himself, but there was no drama involving other people. It felt a little bit like Tom was keeping the readers at arm's length in this book. So like a lot of the stories are kind of surface level, and it feels like he's intentionally not getting very deep and very personal, which is fine. But I think that's somewhat why the ending felt a little bit out of place, because it felt really deep and personal compared to everything else in the book that was not very deep and not very personal. You know what I mean? So if you had any questions about Tom that you think might be answered in this book, they're probably not answered. Well, except the one involving what's going on with Emma Watson and the pajamas and the guitar. But it's probably not the answer you're looking for. We finally do find out what happened between him and Jade, though. I've always wondered what happened with them. I thought they were a great couple. Overall, I think it's worth the read if you are a Tom Felton fan or a Harry Potter fan. I think it was fun. So the second book I read is Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood, the follow-up to The Love Hypothesis, which took Book Talk by storm in 2021. So quick recap, The Love Hypothesis is a romance in a STEM setting. So basically there's a woman named Olive, I believe, and she works with this really grouchy professor named Adam. And they meet at work, appear to not like each other, get to know each other, fall in love. We know the drill. For me, I did enjoy The Love Hypothesis, but the sticky issue for me was just the lack of character development and plot development. It felt a little bit underbaked to me. I felt like the book identified itself as a romance and it was just focused on that, and everything else just went out the window. But it did start out as a fan fiction. So there is somewhat of an assumption that you knew who the characters were. And since it was a romance, there wasn't a ton of other conflict throughout. So as the bulk of the story was progressing, there wasn't really much of a goal. Like, we didn't really know where the story was going besides these two people are going to end up together somehow, but it didn't really feel like there was a bigger point to the story. And so overall, it was just very predictable because the only goal we're working on is to get these two characters together, and it's a romance, so of course you know that's going to happen. So it was just kind of like, what's the point? Right off the bat, I felt like Love on the Brain was really trying to take on these criticisms, and I thought that was great. More time is spent developing the main character, B, instead of just assuming we know her as Rey from Star Wars. And the male lead, Levi, is shown having an actual personality, instead of the readers just being told he's a jerk without actually seeing him be a jerk, while assuming we just know him because he's Kylo Ren from Star Wars. The two of them, B and Levi, also have a goal that they're working on together. They aren't just forced together because they work in the same building and that's all they have in common. Alright, so enough of the comparisons for now. Love on the Brain follows B and Levi as they bring their expertise together to build some sort of space helmet for NASA. Clearly, I'm not a scientist. B is a neuroscientist and she moves herself to Houston to work on this project. That is a great opportunity for her career and she's very excited about it. Levi is an engineer, so he's in charge of like the hardware, B is in charge of the software, the brain stuff. That's their partnership. So they're supposed to be equals in this project, which I love because I just like to see women be equals, okay? While B and Levi are working on this project, they obviously get to know each other more and they get closer, so there's that dynamic between them. But for added conflict, there's also another issue in STEM that shouldn't be an issue, but it is, and that is politics. What made it more interesting than the love hypothesis was that the politics issue was introduced early on, so it's kind of like a running theme throughout the book, so it just made it more interesting to read that there was a running conflict that was aside from the romance and aside from their project. So overall, there were just more things going on. So basically, the reader didn't have to meander through 3/4 of the book wondering where the plot was going. There were also more little side plots going on, such as B's online alter ego in the form of a Twitter account called What Would Marie Curie Do? And that comes into play at the end. The love hypothesis didn't have any such things going on that I remember, at least. Maybe they did, and it's just kind of forgettable. I guess it's hard to get away from the comparisons. But I feel like this book, or Ali Hazelwood, like, it's obvious that she is a real-life scientist, because I feel like she took a very scientific approach to making this book an improvement over her last book. She took note of criticisms, addressed them, and implemented strategies to make this book better. And I think she was successful. So one of the complaints that I hear a lot about this book is that it's just too similar to the love hypothesis. And yes, I do see a lot of the similarities. The dynamic between the two main sets of characters is similar. They meet under similar circumstances. Both couples don't get along at first. And we still haven't gotten away from the big man, small girl trope, which we all know I'm not a fan of. So if you really love the love hypothesis and you're expecting something close but different, then I can see this book being a little bit too close and therefore boring. For me, I enjoyed the love hypothesis for what it was, but I didn't adore it. And I felt like it could have been a lot better. I didn't really latch on to the storyline, and it kind of kept me at a distance. So when I read Love on the Brain and a lot of my complaints about the love hypothesis were addressed, I felt like I was able to really better identify with the story, because it's just a better narrative, in my opinion. So to me, it felt brand new, and it wasn't repetitive to the point of being boring or annoying. So that's my conclusion about Love on the Brain. If you really loved the love hypothesis, then Love on the Brain might feel like a little bit of a letdown. But if you're on the fence about the love hypothesis, then I think you might enjoy Love on the Brain a lot more. If you haven't read either of them, I definitely recommend Love on the Brain. I just think it's better. The last book, and the one I was the most excited about, is The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. This book, I believe, is technically categorized as a romance. In general, most of the elements align with it being a contemporary romance. But I would also call it speculative fiction, because things happen in this book that are very unique in the romance realm. Almost unheard of in the romance realm. These are things that wouldn't be out of the ordinary in a fantasy book, but in a romance book, it's practically unheard of. So this story follows a ghostwriter named Florence Day. Kind of a side note, I really loved the name Florence Day for this character. I felt like it fit her situation and personality so well, but I really just can't put my finger on why it fits her so well. If anybody knows of a reference that I seem to be forgetting, please let me know in the comments, because it's bugging me. Why do I think this name is just so perfect for her? I don't know, one of the mysteries of life. Anyway, Florence is a ghostwriter for a very established and famous romance author. Think Nora Roberts, the kind of author who has written so many books you've lost count, and that if you're a fan of her, you just auto buy the book. Like, you don't even look at it, really. Like, don't even think, just buy. So Florence is trying to ghostwrite this author's latest romance. It's the last one in her contract, and she's almost done with it, but she is just struggling. Florence did write one book under her own name before she became a ghostwriter, but it didn't really sell well, and so she's kind of discouraged and down. But she does know that she's a great writer because all of the books that she has ghostwritten get really great reviews. But because of things that have happened, she just doesn't have like that confidence to really put herself out there. So the story starts with Florence going to a meeting to meet her new editor, or the author's new editor. Florence thinks that he doesn't know that she is the ghostwriter, but he knows. He just doesn't say anything. The meeting doesn't go well. Florence is a year behind on her deadline, and the editor, Ben, threatens to get legal involved for breach of contract if she doesn't turn in the draft of the book by tomorrow. They are off to a great start, these two. So if Florence leaves, she goes off to freak out that even her backup career is a failure. The reason why Florence is having so much trouble writing this last romance when she's done it so many times before is because she recently, or not even really that recently, a year before, went through a breakup that really shook her. It was more than just a regular, this isn't working kind of breakup. Her former fiance betrayed her confidence in the relationship, or rather betrayed the confidentiality within the relationship. And he took something from the relationship in order to benefit himself. That's the best way I can describe it without spoiling the details. Either way, Florence is just very rattled, and she's lost faith and trust, and she just feels listless. She's really not in a good place. Anyway, Florence is out freaking out that night, and she gets a call that her dad has passed away. She hates going home to her hometown because she feels unwelcome due to things that have happened, but she has to go. Also, important detail, Florence can see ghosts and she can talk to them. It's a gift that she got from her dad, and it's something that they shared. So she gets home, she starts dealing with everything that has to be dealt with, and she sees a ghost. The ghost is the editor that she just met yesterday, Ben. He has died after threatening her with legal. It kind of feels like comeuppance. Florence's gift is usually to help ghosts settle their affairs and find peace and cross over. But Ben doesn't seem to want to do any of that. He can't believe he died. He insists he's not supposed to be dead, and he wants to stay. So Florence is dealing with him, this ghost, and meanwhile she's also trying to deal with her family. Planning the funeral, her sister being difficult, family issues, while also grappling with her breakup that has derailed her life as she planned it, and dealing with the disappointment of her career. She's overall just disappointed. There's just a lot going on, and to me, it felt like a really complete world because Florence has a lot going on, like everybody. It isn't one of those romances that the prospective couple is just the center of the universe and there's nothing else happening. And I really like that in a romance. I like when it feels like a complete world. So the story overall is just very interesting to follow. And the pacing felt good because there was always something happening. I feel like in some books, if there aren't enough subplots or any subplot, then the pacing just feels really slow overall, even though the author probably intentionally made it that way so that it doesn't feel like the main plot is moving too quickly, but then the overall picture is it's just moving really slow because there's nothing happening in between the events of the main plot. Hopefully you know what I mean. I feel like The Love Hypothesis was a prime example of that. There is an ongoing theme of death, so if that bothers you, you probably won't enjoy this book. If I'm honest, I don't like death, so some parts gave me the creeps, but it didn't affect my enjoyment too much. Also, another detail, Florence's family runs a funeral home. So this is set in and around a funeral home, so yeah, I mean, there's that. And because of this ongoing theme of death, the story just has this really reminiscent tone. One thing I found interesting was, besides the obvious conflicts of Florence not getting her book done in time, and Ben being there following her around like a puppy, insisting that he's not dead. A lot of the conflict comes from stuff that Florence has dealt with in the past, but has not truly ever dealt with, and she's dealing with it now. A lot of these things were not her fault, and she's really now only working through it and trying to right the injustices of her past. So much of her character arc and growth doesn't come from her romance with the ghost editor. Instead, her character growth is about like rebuilding her sense of self. That, alongside the theme of death, it felt like the old broken version of herself was slowly dying and she was being reborn as the better version of herself. I just thought it was really nice. It was unique and interesting as a form of entertainment, but I also think it was really touching. So if you think you hate romances because they're pointless and vapid, Merry Little Me cute, then read this one. The only criticism that I have that isn't really even a criticism is that the romance portion is somewhat predictable. Just based on what you know about romance, you can infer accurately how things are going to work out. So there isn't really that much of an element of surprise. But do you read romance novels for surprise? Not really. I feel like the author knew this and she was trying to add some surprises that we weren't expecting, but they weren't really all that surprising either. The point of this book is a lot more about the character arcs than it was about the surprises. But I'm okay with that. I still really liked it, and I wholeheartedly recommend this book if you like romances at all. Or actually, if you think you don't like romances and you are annoyed by them, you still may like this one. I loved it. Read it if you haven't read it.
Reading.
Reading? Mm-hmm. So yes, that is my collection of uncategorized books that I liked reading recently. I have returned to this channel at exactly the wrong time because so far I have only made 2 videos and I'm not sure exactly how many more there will be until mid-January. I'll probably be scarce again until then. Maybe I'll come back with a vlog of my travels. I'll prove to you that I actually do leave my house occasionally. I'm also trying to get my reading a little bit more organized again, but I mean, things are still a little bit scattered. So it's a work in progress. If you haven't already, please subscribe. It really helps my channel get out to more book lovers so we can all share in the book love together. I think that's all for today. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.
I left things unsaid, and you cannot forget how my mistakes haunt us, but do they really daunt us? Your tongue can be sharp, cut me close to the heart, but we can master the art, and the thing is